Canadian political commentary is taking off across this country, and it's not happening on mainstream media. In fact, most Canadians don't trust mainstream media anymore. They feel that they are bought and paid for. So we're starting to get our information on places like YouTube, and there's no one better than my next guest to deliver that information. She's sharp, she's witty, and she comes at you with truth and opinion that you appreciate every single day that you watch her. Her name is Jasmin Laine, and she joins me today for an interview exclusively here on this channel so that we can talk about the mainstream media, politics in Canada, and what Jasmin Laine is doing next and how this, in particular, drives her forward. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker, and I'm extremely excited to have one of my favorite podcasters on YouTube right now, who I think is probably becoming one of the number one political commentators in the country. So, Jasmine, you're going to have to live up to this today. But I am very, very excited to welcome Jasmin Laine. If you haven't had a chance to see Jasmin Laine on YouTube or across some of her social medias, which we'll share in the description and in the at the end as well, she is a great follow. It is a feisty podcast over opinionated, and I love it because it gives you the opportunity to not only hear the truth you won't hear on mainstream media, but also to hear Jasmine's opinion on things which are always spot on. And Jasmine, thrilled to have you here. I really appreciate you taking the time. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for that glowing introduction. My grandpa would probably disagree with it always being spot on, but I'll convert him one day.
That's right. That's right. Anybody who's liberal probably won't believe anything you and I are about to say, but that's okay. It's fine. And something big is going to happen. You know that, right? While we're having this conversation, Christopher Freeland's going to tell us all we can't have cats anymore or something like that. There's going to be something happen that we're going to have to both get off and go, wait, do another episode. But I do appreciate you being here. And obviously, Over Opinionated is one of my favorite shows to watch. I watch it every single day.
Thank you.
I wanted to kind of get into that first before we get into some of the crux of our questions here today, because obviously, to me, at least as a fanboy, that came out of nowhere. Your podcast came up as a suggestion on YouTube one day. I know you're on all the major podcasting platforms as well, but I happened to be perusing the YouTube recommendations, and then it popped up, and your headline was great, and I was like, okay, let me watch this. This seems interesting, and was hooked from then on. So tell me, how did that happen? What was the background story on you and what you've been doing in life, but also on the show itself?
My goodness, it's such a different story than I think so many people have in the YouTube realm. But previously I had been a broadcaster for 11 years, and then I was mysteriously removed from my morning show. And so at that point in time, I had already been filming some stuff on YouTube prior to that. I think I was at maybe like 10,000 subscribers. I wasn't talking a lot about Canadian issues. I was talking more so about some culture war stuff, some things in the US, just overall things that I was passionate about. And then I decided to go full blown into politics after I was removed from my show. But, in terms of actually starting the account, and I've spoken about this publicly, so I'm comfortable with sharing it, but I had actually started YouTube. I was really depressed. I was really suicidal, actually, and I couldn't have a conversation anymore, I thought. And the reason why I started producing videos was because I was trying to remember how to talk to people again. And I think as a broadcaster as well, talking is everything. It's like the only thing I'm good at. And so I was just kind of in this weird place where I truly, truly did not think that I could talk to people anymore. Like, I felt like I was in such a dark place, and YouTube was an easy option for me. I had all of the equipment. I already had a home studio due to my line of work. And so I just decided, you know what? Nobody's going to know me on this platform. I can just go upload things. And then I can, as I'm editing it, like I'm uploading it just to kind of push myself to put something that I'm saying out in the open to try to build that confidence again. But as I'm going through and editing things and adding in clips, I'm able to kind of critique myself. And it really was just something more so to try to pull me out of that dark hole and be good at the only thing I'm good at again, because I really didn't believe that I was. And then lo and behold, very quickly, my life changed a lot as a result of it. It did not take very long at all for people to really start resonating with the things that I was saying. And so in that too, it's the greatest honor of my life for now. And when I have kids, everybody will be replaced. But for now, it is the greatest honor of my life. And, to say things that I once was maybe scared to say. And just to know that I'm not alone and I'm not a total idiot like the devil on my shoulder was telling me, and that there's I don't know, there's just such a wonderful community here that I didn't even know existed, and it's just the most beautiful thing.
Well, the devil on your shoulder was very wrong.
They
That's
usually are. So
yeah, a devil on your shoulder was very wrong, because not only are we seeing, people getting hooked on it, but your comment sections are filled with comments, and we all know that there's other comments we don't want to pay attention to in those sections as well. But at the same time, there's a lot of loving, glowing comments that are directed at you, and I think that's just fantastic. I think people are enjoying what's different about you. Which, if I had to guess, this was maybe coming right out of your personality and not actually just anything planned, but
mhm.
satire part of the shows that you do, mixed with the serious news and opinion on everything that we're seeing in Canada and politics today, I think is what hooks people. I know it's what hooked me. Was that planned, or is that just who you are? Is that just the way you look at life?
Oh gosh, that is the way that I would describe myself, and I'm going to use a word that I call my nephew, but I am a total goofy goober. Um and no, I that's just me. I'm filled with sarcasm. I'm filled with like weird twists on things, or kind of looking at things from maybe a different angle perhaps. I'm also the youngest of six, so I kind of had to have that in order to survive. So that just kind of came. I would say all of that is just me. Like, I'm just a really goofy, silly person, and I love to joke and I love to laugh, and I love to add comedic relief in even the worst of situations. So politics and that you wouldn't think would be a good mixture, but somehow it is. So I'm grateful.
It's true, because you'll have I can't even think of an example right now, but just something like that where, oh yeah, Mark Carney, or something like, just some kind
Yeah.
of like sarcasm you're using, and it'll get us bursting out laughing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, it's so true as well, which I think, the truth can be can be very funny, especially in this country right now. Uh,
Mhm.
so when you look at it all, what do you think? How do you pick your topics? Because this political climate is insane. Like, it is literally changing on the daily. I'll look at it in the morning, it's completely different in the afternoon. But it seems like in your show, every single topic resonates with your audience. I always see you've got, 150,000 views on pretty much everything. There's a reason for that. Obviously, people like watching you, but obviously, you're also picking the right topics. How do you decide what it is you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, honestly, that is so different day to day, but I would also say that it's very much impromptu the morning of. One thing that I do try very hard to do with my show, because I'll cover, anywhere from 5 to sometimes 10 different stories in a single episode, and I keep the episodes as short as possible. So some of those stories may just be like a quick 30-second recap of something, or reading a headline before we get into the next thing, but I really want to always have a good flow. So I'm never just going to randomly throw things together and piece them together. There will be things in the news cycle, and I'll find a way to make them flow together. So it's almost like one cohesive story with some new updates. At least that's what I try to do. But I would say that overall, when it comes to picking my stories, I mean, I love politics. I have from an incredibly young age, which is super weird, I know. But I just feel like I've always loved the news. I used to present news on my shows as well, and like back when I worked in mainstream, and I really loved it, and I love to write, and so I feel like there's just always things that I see throughout the day that kind of grab my attention. So I would say like a typical day, there's dozens of newsletters that I'm subscribed to that come into my email. So it's like morning, I wake up, have my coffee, do a little walk around the yard with my dog, and then like sit down, read through all of the newsletters, and I literally make notes with like a pen and paper, because I'm vintage. So I I'll take notes of just like some topics that I like that are making the blood boil, making me think a lot, things that I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into. And then I'll always scroll social media as well, see what's trending most that day. And then lastly, as a part of it too, I watch the CBC, I watch the CTV. I have those playing while I'm getting ready before I start filming my show. And so it really is like a solid, I'd say 4 to 6 hour window of my day that starts every single day of just consuming as much content as humanly possible and finding what stands out to me. I actually don't think that I have yet to ever cover a story that I didn't care about. So everything I'm like, ooh, that made me feel a type of way. Let's add that in there. Or this is really important to know. I learned something new because of this, and let's add that in there. So that probably helps too. Like, it's not like I'm just trying to produce content for the sake of producing it. I genuinely care about the things that I'm talking about because they've interested me. And I'm nothing special. So if they interest me, then certainly they have to interest other people as well.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% because I if I'm not interested in it, you're gonna catch that on camera, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna see that. We know that obviously I have a broadcasting background, not nearly as extensive as yours, but you can see it. Like it doesn't take a professional broadcaster to see when people don't care about something or are just
Mhm.
doing it to get the clicks or whatever it is.
Gosh, I have to cut you off there too, bringing up the broadcaster background. Like, that is something too that I don't have it in me anymore to talk about things that I don't care about. Like, I spent so many years of my life being excited about things that I wasn't excited about, being a fan over things that I'm not a fan of. Like, you just do things for the sake of the show. Oh, wow, this new song dropped. Oh, wow, they're my favorite artist. I don't care about that artist in the slightest. But if you ask me, I'm obsessed with them. And like, I could list you every song of theirs, but I don't actually care. And that's just kind of the nature of the business. And so I feel like now that I'm on the other side of things where I actually have control in the things that I talk about again, man, if I don't care about something, I'm like allergic to it. I'm like, no, you can put that, you're wiping that off my plate and we're putting it over there for somebody else to eat because I am not interested.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's about the authenticity, right? And there's just something about the authenticity with your show that I really actually, it was one of our questions for today. I wanted to ask you, obviously it's funny because I'll get emails in my inbox that I have attached to the channel and they'll be, how are you doing this? Are you working the algorithm? Are you, doing all the SEO? Are you, give me advice? And I'm thinking, I just do what I love and I talk about
yeah.
what I love to talk about. Is that kind of what you're doing? Like, you don't sit there and work the algorithm all day, I don't think, do you?
Oh, I certainly have a lot of research hours put into that stuff.
Okay.
I definitely do. It's a part of my schedule every Friday for minimum 2 hours. I am researching and trying to figure out ways to better do what I'm doing. But that's, and I feel like that's, just kind of smart for any business, right? So I do have that a little bit, but I would say overall, no, I quite literally just talk about the things that I care about and I put it out there. There's a lot of materials that you can learn from or people who you really appreciate in the space, people who you like to watch, and you can try to emulate some of what they're doing. And so I certainly do that as well. I think at this point in time, though, I've been doing this long enough. It hasn't been super long. It's been like a year and a bit, but I've been doing it long enough where I do have my own flow and I don't need as much outside influence. I'm certainly not closed off to it though. I mean, learning, I feel like you should always take a portion of your day to learn more, even if you think you're an expert because you're not. So I do think that that's very important. But I would say overall, yeah, it quite literally is just I care about this, and for whatever reason, I'm talking about this today because I learned something new, or I think you should know this, or this is crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's perfect advice for those asking that question. Do what you're passionate about, talk about what you're passionate about, but also do the research behind how to get it out there, how to get the
Mhm.
message to as many people as possible. I love that. You did mention something earlier that I don't think anybody would be surprised in because of how you're doing your research. But you mentioned watching extensively the CBC and also CTV and others. Um, Interestingly, I think we're finding, I would imagine if you look at your YouTube stats, a lot of your audience is probably Gen Z, millennials.
Mhm.
Um, they're consuming information like this completely differently today, including a very bit different news. They don't want the boring news, right? They're not going to sit there and listen to Rosemary and Caillou or whatever his name is, and they're gonna listen to you. They're going to listen to kind of the feistiness you have behind your podcast and things like that. Are you finding that? And do you think that the younger generations are steering more toward independent media?
I would say without a doubt, yes. And there's so much behind that as well. I mean, I think too, it's been kind of interesting to kind of see the way that YouTube Shorts has evolved. Same with TikTok, even Instagram Reels, things like that, where there are so many more people who aren't just doing like a dance compilation. Though those are very entertaining to watch, but there's a lot more people that are just talking about their life, the struggles, the news, what's going on. And so then that becomes a pretty good way to get your information. And even TikTok, as an example, this statistic is old. It's from 2024, but it was like 80 something percent of Gen Z. That's where they got their news from. And also, I think it was like 67% of women who were between the ages of 35 and 44, something like that, also got their news from TikTok, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's been a really big difference in the way that people consume things. And a lot of that has to do with being on the go. And so that's why even YouTube or something is just awesome. If you're on YouTube or Spotify, people can listen to that wherever. They're not always going to have the time of their day to make sure that they watch a Power and Politics episode that's going to go an hour and it's going to be filled with all sorts of stuff that they don't care about, just because they might talk about something else. Whereas, in other forms of content, I would consider my show to be short form still, like it's under half an hour.
Yeah.
But in other forms of content, you know what you're getting right off the hop, and you're going to get it soon. And so I think that our attention spans are quite low, and you want to have that payoff and that punch as quickly as possible. If there is something that you're interested in learning more about, and you'd prefer to hear somebody tell you about it than do the research on your own.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think from a generational perspective, that's that way. But even when I look at my YouTube stats, when I'm just perusing what the market looks like, what the audience looks like, it's often a lot of seniors too. We got boomers on there too. There's a good percentage.
Same here.
Yeah, and it's exciting because that tells
Yeah.
me that people are branching out from what they used to do, and I think that's important because I think these opinions are making sure that we don't. Well, we're clearly upsetting the apple cart. I want to get to that in a second, but also that we don't get just this one paid for opinion like the CBC has, where back in the day that was it. I mean, that was the story. You weren't getting anything else, and so now there's that opportunity. And you mentioned actually in one of your episodes, and you don't have to give who it was or any of those types of pieces of information, but you mentioned that some mainstream media has reached out to you to try to stop you. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I've had stuff like that happen a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me seems like, why would you do that? I mean, what happened to freedom of speech in this country, right?
Well, I mean, if you take a look at what happened even with CBC bragging about getting that YouTuber taken down over something
Right.
that made like no sense at all. That like I think that there's a really big, and it's ego. Everything about it is ego and pride. It's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to not be involved in mainstream anymore, because I am finally away from all of those people who are absolute monsters, but the public thinks that they're amazing, and you have to play it off like they're amazing, even though they're really mean. Um, so I think that there's a lot of that to it, where you had dominated this industry for so long, and many companies are still doing well, by the way. But you had dominated this industry for so very long, you had almost no competition in some markets, and then all of a sudden, now your competition is somebody who doesn't even live in your province anymore, right? And I think there's a lot of ego that comes with that, territorial. Maybe it's like if you have a new dog or something and they want to go and pee on every tree. That to me is kind of what the CBC has been doing to a lot of people lately.
Yeah, for sure.
Peeing on all the trees.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I think they continue to do that. And that kind of segues into where we are in this country right now. It is, to me, completely, I think I've talked about it in about 5 or 6 episodes in the last week. My audience is probably getting tired of it, but I can't believe there's no budget. I cannot believe we live in a country that hasn't had a budget in a year.
Oh,
And
well, there is a budget. They're just not releasing it.
that's right. So what's your opinion on that? And first of all, maybe why they're not releasing it. I mean, I think we all know, but What's your thoughts?
Well, actually, just earlier today, I was reading an article that Carney had said that he's not releasing the budget because the numbers are changing so fast every day with all of the promises of spending that they're doing. I mean, obviously, he just announced that we were going to meet the 2% NATO target. It's funny, liberals like to complain about conservative cuts, but here we are.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how else.
I love it.
I don't know how else you're gonna make that target, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think there's also a lot of people who have maybe kind of blown it up more than it needed to be. And I say that solely just because, we'll use this as an example in past governments as well. To be elected and present a budget a week later, that's crazy. But having said that, we are in this tightened election cycle, or it was a tight election. It was kind of at a weird date. But the Liberals had planned that. They had known that for months in advance. I don't believe for 10 seconds that Justin Trudeau decided the morning of that he was going to be stepping down. That was months and months in the making. That's how these things work. And so the Liberals absolutely do have a budget. I think that there's two options. Number one is that they genuinely, and I'm not leaning towards this one, but they genuinely don't want to release it just because it's really high, which we can presume it is given their proposed spending as is. Or they don't want to release it because we have the G7 coming up. We have NATO meetings coming up. And so I think that there's probably a good amount of risk associated with releasing it in terms of other countries. Let's even take the NATO spending as an example. He goes and promises, oh, yeah, we're spending all of this. And then let's say we come out with a budget and, oh, we're in a $400 trillion deficit. That obviously isn't going to look very good to the Americans, right? Who are going to say, well, you promised this, but we're not stupid and we know you can't meet it. So I think there's probably some strategy behind that as well. And for me as a whole, I think that it would be reasonable I think I'm more upset with them choosing to go on summer break than I am with them not releasing a budget until the fall, because to me, in my brain, I think, okay, well, if our country's in as much peril as you've described for the last number of months, which we are so sick and tired of hearing already, like, just get it together, man, figure it out here because you can. Why are you wasting your time on this if it's so very serious? And clearly that's because it was a sham, in my opinion. And I think a lot of us knew that prior. The Trump tariffs and all that situation, sure, it's very annoying and it does impact some industries more than others. And so that is really unfortunate. But the greatest issue that we have is definitely not Donald Trump. It is definitely our own government spending. And that goes provincially as well as it does federally. But so I'm very frustrated because if they had not taken, let's say that they don't go and rise for the summer, well, that probably means that we could have a budget in like a month instead of having to wait until the fall. And so to me, I'm more frustrated with that than I am about the fact that there's no budget till fall, so they claim. And I will say too, it's quite fascinating. The Conservatives had said that they had given, honestly, a lot of leeway to the Liberals, because when they had put forth that motion last week, they had said that you could prevent an economic statement or a budget. So one is obviously substantially easier to do than the other. And it just blows me away that they won't do anything. And I do also think at the end of the day, and this is probably, perhaps they're playing on some people who aren't as politically savvy. Any amount of spending that you do, every single thing that you announce that you want to do, it has to get passed in the House. There has to be a budget. You have to lay out all of that groundwork. And so the fact that they haven't is just fascinating to me. And I'm more so annoyed that they keep announcing, we're going to meet 2% NATO. Well, where's the budget then? Because
Right.
like, I don't care about anything that you say or you promise until we see that, because you're not being held accountable. And I don't believe it until I see it on paper and I can go through and read absolutely every scorching detail of it to figure out where you're pulling from, what you're adding to, what that means long term. And so that we can then kind of discuss it. And I do also think I wouldn't be surprised either if part of the reason why, and I'm just theorizing, but if part of the reason why they have yet to announce those details could also be because it ain't going to be good. And we already know that from what was it that Mark Carney had proposed? It was $432 billion in new spending without any information. That's just what they want. So if he's already doing things like that, we got to spend more. Yeah, we're going to spend more and we're going to save money. That's not how money works, you worldwide economists. Nice try, though. And so I just think that they probably are. I think they want to hold on to power perhaps a little bit longer, because if they release a budget and let's say that it is filled with insanity and then immediately they rise for the summertime, that's a bad way to leave the media. That's a bad way to leave independents. That's a bad way to leave opposition, because they'll have the entire summer to rip you to shreds on it before you come back, right? So I think a lot of it is probably strategic and planning. And I also just incompetence. I'll sum it up that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I would believe it on that one too, because I think, I will look at all the bills that have been presented so far, which is only a few, but still, they all read like press releases. None of them have any plans. There's nothing actually detailed there. You talk about the 2% GDP. We've never done that before.
Yeah.
So now we're going to do that. We're going to do it without a budget. We're going to do it with all the Trump tariffs going on. Like, wait a minute now. Like, we can't do everything all at once, but at the same time, what is the plan? Like, there doesn't seem to be a plan for any of it. And
man, my favorite thing right now is reading through Mark Carney's Twitter or X posts. Every post, we promised Canadians just, I'm like, shut up. Holy crap. Like, you remind me of like some psychotic ex who's like blowing up my phone all the time, apologizing for something that happened 4 years ago because you just so desperately want to get back together. Meanwhile, I'm already married or something. Like, the way that he talks is so irritating to me at this point, again, because of exactly as you just said. There is actually no plan. And at one point or another, it just becomes redundant and useless. Stop telling me about all the things you're going to do. You have no plan. Figure it out. Take a break from X for a little while. I don't know. And then come back when you actually have something of substance to share with us, instead of just regurgitating the same BS that you've been saying for literally months.
exactly. And you're bang on, because the other thing too was their platform, right? It was prepared for Justin Trudeau. There was no plan for an actual election platform for Mark Carney. And so there is nothing that is, I mean, if you think about that plan, the housing thing is ridiculous. I mean, they should just stop talking about the CK, because like they're going to be embarrassed by that. It's obviously a move to help out Brookfield or whatever. I don't know. Even reading through that, none of it talks about home ownership. So how are you solving homeowner?
Well, I'll fill you in on this a tad, because I was just talking about this on my show yesterday. But so does it help out Brookfield? Very possible. They did acquire the Modular Group in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But so the thing about it though is, so you have the government who wants to get involved in home building, right? That's why they're proposing this. What does that mean? Is the government your real estate agent now? No. No, they're not. What's probably going to happen, and this could change, who knows, but what I could see happening here, what makes the most sense logically, is that you're going to have prefab housing that may not be CCANs. We don't know. It could just be smaller little bungalows or something. But like, you're going to have prefab housing that will be put on land that the property owner doesn't own, because they don't own the property house. They don't own anything at all. And so the way that I see that working out, that makes logical sense with the government getting involved in building homes, because the government is not a realtor, is that you're probably going to end up leasing something from government property, right? Like that is the only logical way that I can make sense of that. And I would love for them to prove me wrong by, I don't know, presenting a plan and telling us what the heck it is that they want to do, so that we aren't stuck with our minds going wild like this, because we literally don't know what's happening at all anymore. So yeah, sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, I'm pretty sure there is going to be no home ownership at all. I think it'll be a bougie rental. Bougie.
bang on in everything you're saying here because there's spending, there's no plan. It seems like the spending is constant. Like what I don't understand is how you spent $70 billion without anybody's permission at the beginning of the year by just going to the governor general. You had a king that you flew here and really couldn't fly himself. This is my biggest problem with that trip is how are we sending an empty jet over there, bringing him here, sending him back, and then sending the empty jet back over here? Isn't this guy like a big environmentalist? Like he's allowing
Yeah.
like, all of this. And I don't think anybody even watched that throne speech, to be honest. So
It's crazy. I didn't.
I didn't either. I just looked at
I saw
the
some of the I saw some stuff about it, but I didn't watch it at all. I didn't care
yeah,
at all.
neither did I. But think about what we probably spent on that. So you look at all the
1.2 million a day is what it was for his accommodations and
there you
food and
go.
stuff. That I know for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got wildfires in the west, but they're doing stories about a turkey chasing him around at his tree planting. Like I don't understand what is happening in this country anymore. It's unbelievable. Like CBC,
Yeah.
this clip, somebody posted it on TikTok, and it was literally them talking about a turkey running after the king. And I'm like, okay, but Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC are all burning at the same time, and we
Yeah.
don't care about that. We're just watching a turkey chase a king. Like, what is going on in this country? And to me, the spending is just way out of control. And I think you're
Mhm.
exactly right. I think that's part of why they're not going to present the budget until the fall because they don't want people seeing that. It's not the
Yeah.
number they're telling us. It's not 463. It's not 70 billion. It's not the 9.3 billion for the getting to 2% of GDP. This is all of that combined probably and more.
Well, and I think he's also, and he has talked about this at length, and we've had Senate members and stuff talking about this too. What I think is going to happen in that budget is that the numbers are going to be astronomical, but Mark Carney is planning to cook the books allegedly. And so my assumption there is that there's going to be all sorts of investment that is actually not investment. It's just spending, but we're investing in what? Investments. So I'm fully prepared to see that. I'm fully prepared to see an astronomical number, and I just cannot wait to debate with people in the comment sections about how to make sense of those investments.
Oh, me too.
So,
Me too. That's exactly what he's going to do. It's the economist way of doing it, right? Is
yeah, of
make it
course.
like you're investing, so it's not an expenditure,
Mhm.
it's an investment. But how? And I don't know that he'll ever get up there and explain it. He'll just yell at the reporters that ask him about it and tell them to look inside themselves and whatever else he likes to use as his phraseology. So he's
He
just
likes to do this a lot too.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if you're a woman, look out because apparently that's even worse. So,
Yeah, I've definitely noted, and I don't like to do that either. I'm not one to pull the woman card a whole bunch, but that is something that I think after a certain amount of times that it occurs, it's worthy to take note of.
yeah.
And that certainly seems to be the case with him. Yeah.
It does. It does. And so, there's just so many things. And it surprised me. And that actually gets me to my next question for you because when we look at back at the election and we see all the rallies that Pierre had, and obviously you and I are both Pierre Poilievre fans. So that's obvious too. Even
I'm
though
not a Pierre Poilievre fan. I'm an Ana Poilievre fan. Okay.
Ana Poilievre too, and I want to ask you about that too. But yeah, for sure, absolutely, she did those great intros for him at all of the rallies, and and just from a conservative perspective, things looked great. But
Mhm.
I think there was just this huge groundswell of liberals who were just mad at that in general. They didn't care whether Mark Carney actually had plans. They didn't care what his plans were if he did, and they did not care even really about who the man was. They were convinced when he was brought over that that was it. That's the guy. He looks the part. So now I'm just going to hate Pierre. And I'm going to hate the conservatives. I'm not going to listen to their ideas. Do you think that's a lot of what happened here? Like just people shutting out the ideas the conservatives were bringing to the table?
I think in Canada, in particular, people are liberal, and they'll deny this, but I just have yet, and I have tried so hard to try to wrap my head around this one, and I have yet to come up with a different description. But a lot of liberal Canadians are liberal because they're a good person, and they're a good person because they're a liberal. And that's about as deep as it gets. And so anything that is liberal means that you're a good person. And I think also too, like this is such a big topic to unpack, but you got to think about how things have been taught to people, and the way that the establishment and the media for decades has just had such a hold on our institutions, on power, on our media, on everything, like all these things that are just, if you were to tell somebody about this who came from Venezuela, they'd be like, wait, that's a slippery slope. But I really do believe that there's been so much, and I'll use the scary word that people don't like to say because it sounds conspiratorial, but sorry, that's what the word is. There's been so much indoctrination from a very young age based on that I'm a good person because I'm a liberal, and I'm liberal because I'm a good person logic, where to even so much as to have the audacity to question the Liberal Party or to side with the conservatives means a very high risk of being ostracized. It means that you're a bad person because you're a conservative. And so I think that there are a lot of people who very much have that type of an ideology in their head, and they're very keen to believe anything that the liberals do or to defend the liberals based on that and that alone. It doesn't go much deeper than that, as far as I've been able to tell it. And certainly I have people in my life who are liberal, and we have interesting conversations. I learn a lot from them, and hopefully vice versa. And I just think that I really do think that there's just been this mass media and establishment takeover, which makes perfect sense. I mean, even in the last 30 plus years, I think it's been 32 or 33 years now, we've only had a conservative government for 9 out of those years. So let that sink in. Do you really think that the conservatives who don't pass legislation, who don't really have any power outside of opposing things when they have a majority to be able to do it, which hasn't happened in a very long time, by the way, outside of, the most recent thing that took place in the House when it came to the throne speech or something where everybody was planning to go against it. But that is quite rare in Canadian politics. The Liberals have always either had like a majority or a majority due to the fact that they've had some backdoor deals with other parties. So do you really think that the conservatives are the problem? Do you really think that the world has turned into what it is because of the conservatives? Or do you really think that the legacy media, the establishment has its grips really deep in there because they've been doing this for a very long time? And I think that we saw that en masse, truly, this past election. You had the same types of smear tactics and campaigns that went around as they always do. You had a lot of people as well who I really do think that the left, and I'm not talking about liberals, I'm just talking about people on the far left, which we need to be talking about a lot more, because I don't know, bro, have you seen what's happening in California right now?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen conservatives protest like that. You can call us far right all you want as though that's an insult, but I'm scared of your camp, buddy, not mine.
Exactly.
But so I think that they just have their grips in big time. And there is such a big deal when it comes to people being ostracized and feeling that we have a herd mentality as human beings. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to fall into that. I don't consider myself to be a lion by any stretch. I'm sure I would get absolutely eaten if I went to Africa. Probably by lions, maybe by other things. I don't know. There's a lot of bugs out there, but like, I think that it's okay to do things to want to fit in. But, and there's so many people too, who I hear from that say like, oh, all my friends are liberal and I just pretend to go along with it. And I understand that. I used to do that as well. And then one day I decided I can't do this anymore because it's absolutely killing me. Like, this is eating away at my soul, to not put my foot down when I know that it needs to hear somebody say something that isn't true, and to not at least try to plead for the other perspective there. And so I just think that it's been decades and decades and decades long of people absolutely being manipulated, of the truth being manipulated, being misled, and then by the established elite of not just Canada, but the world. I mean, look at left-leaning governments globally. Every single one of them is doing the exact same thing, all with failure, yet they keep saying it's going to work. Lie detector test determined that's a lie. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And they're all the same. And so, even if you want to factor in Australia, they're what do they call them? They're liberal. The Liberal Party of Australia is the conservative, and then it's the Labour Party that is the liberal. And so their Labour Party, same with the UK. UK seems to have taken quite a different turn on that as of late. I'm not quite sure how genuine that is. They are nearing an election year, but all of these people from all over the globe have all allowed for radical leftism to infiltrate their government, for activists to become ministers in their parliament. And every single one of them is falling apart one by one, just following the same coloring book. And there's something really important to note about that too, that I don't mean to come across as too conspiratorial, but you get to a point where how many more examples do you need that there is something really big here that is working against those people who are actually grassroots. And so I just think there's really is so much against us, and it really does just kind of start with you and where do you stand and what do you know? Do you know enough? Have you researched enough to pull statistics out of your yeehaw as quickly as you need to so that you can argue somebody, debate somebody? Are you actually saying what you think? Are you smiling and nodding because you're scared of your coworkers not inviting you to lunch anymore if you stop doing that? And I think that, the power of the people in that regard, I'm kind of half answering your question now, but the power of the people in that regard is very strong. And I think that we just weren't quite there yet. But I can guarantee you that a few more months of Mark Carney, Kim Jong Carney, as I like to call him.
Perfect. Perfect.
And I think that there will be a lot of people who start to wake up. And, as you had kind of described as well, without that budget, there's all these things that don't make sense. We don't have the money for them. They don't add up. And people will see that. And it's just going to take time. And, we're fighting a battle that is very much against us globally, not even just in this country. It's very much against us. And it was happening in the US as well, up until we had, Donald Trump be the man who he was. And you may not agree with everything that he does and says. I know I don't. But at the end of the day, he spoke to people in that way where he wanted to rid the establishment. He actually brought light to something that is so real. That's not a conspiracy. It's very real. Even take a look at Mark Carney. Who are his advisors? What do they do for a living? Investigate that and tell me that that's a conspiracy.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we're seeing with this government, and some of it's plain as day, but people won't see it, right? And I remember seeing somebody comment on the recent Nanos poll, which we all know leans liberal, but they were talking about how the result of that poll showed how the liberals have a pretty high approval rating so far, and how could they, because of everything that they have actually not done. I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, it's literally nothing other than talk. So, but people were saying that liberals, that's the way they do it. They just kind of just turn off the news now. It doesn't matter. My guy got elected, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then when you call me about the poll, I go, yeah, he's doing well. Like that's about it. That's how disconnected this country is. And you can even see it in the comments. The people that are conservative, that are on comments on my videos, and I'm sure yours as well, are bringing out facts. They're bringing out pieces of information in their comments and saying these things. And then I get one that says Maple MAGA. That's it. That's all they
So
wrote.
stupid.
That's all. Like, can you not say anything else now? Like, can we?
Cheers to all of the Maple MAGAs out there. The people who comment it more particularly, very original.
Yeah,
So stupid.
exactly. And it'll be one right after the other. I'm like, wow, you guys are smart. Great.
I do want to say also though, and this is something that I talk about a lot, and I have researched it a lot, and I'm very familiar with it. Is I don't think that enough Canadians even know how much our news and our algorithms and our social media is so vastly different from other nations due to regulations, due to the CRTC, which regulates unelected regulating officials that I said that word weird, whatever, you know what I was saying, who actually dictate what can be streamed on TV, what can be shown on TV, what words are no words, what topics are no words. We had Bill C-11 and Bill C-18. Both of those things prioritize the government messaging. And this is a fact that government messaging from approved outlets is priority. That's why if you ever Google something, if you go through the first 3 pages of it, you're probably not going to see anything that's bad about what it is that you're searching. If you search Mark Carney in Brookfield, you're going to see 3 pages worth of how amazing and experienced he is. Every single one of those articles is published by a government approved, federally funded, to an extent, not all of them as high as the CBC, but every single one of those is posted by one of those outlets. And you have to search, you really do, to find outside voices, like those outside voices that are not incorrect. Sometimes they're a little crazy, but they're not incorrect. They're just the other half of the story. And I really don't think that enough Canadians realize just how much those bills, those rulings, and those regulating bodies have seriously impacted the information that we see. And it sounds crazy. And so most people will hear you say that and they'll say, well, that's not true. Why would Canada ever do that? It is true. And they did do that. And you should go and read those bills because they passed. And that is all happening here.
Hmm. And you just explained something to me out of answering it that way, because now I understand why the wildfires aren't on page 1, 2, or 3. They're on page 4,
Mhm.
5, or 6, because that's not a government priority right now. That will distract
Yep.
Carney. He's got his own ideas to do other things that he's not actually going to do, but he's going to say he's going to do. And then, it would take away from that. So, and I hear that from the West all the time in my comments and things like, nobody's talking about what's happening out here. And if you go to their local news stations, yes, they're basically top story. Obviously, they should be.
Mhm.
But when you go to CTV, CBC, Global News, National Post, all of those outlets are all reporting on Mark Carney's stuff first. And then if you go way below the fold, you've got some stuff on some of the wildfires.
Mhm.
And that's just terrible. People are losing their homes. There's things going on out there, hopefully not losing their lives, but how would we know? There's nobody reporting on it. So it's like
Yeah.
it's
In
really
the province I live in, there was 2 people who lost their lives actually due to the fires, about 2 weeks ago now. And yeah, I mean, that received tons of local coverage, but that was about it.
yeah, because it's not put out by the government, right? And so
Mhm.
it's very, very crazy. I do want to get to one or two more things before I let you go. I know you're super busy, but I wanted to talk about your interview with Pierre and Ana Poilievre. I didn't want to lose sight of you saying you love Anna, because tell us about that. Like that was crazy. When I saw you were going to do that, I know you teased it a little bit a few days before.
Mhm.
We were all kind of just. I'm sure all of us who are fans of you were just like, let's get this out. I want to see it, and it was so good. It was so
Oh,
good.
thank you.
It was not just good because we all like Pierre and Anna, but the questions you asked and the answers they got to. In particular, I really liked Anna's answers about the treatment of women within the Conservative Party,
Mhm.
um, because there's a lot of BS out there about that.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about, and I've had people throw that at me. Oh, you obviously don't care about women's rights. What? Just because I'm conservative, I don't care about that? Like, what are you talking about? But that's the narrative that was put out there. Talk to me about talking to them in person. Are they as genuine as they came across? And tell us more about Anna and who she is.
I mean, I'll start with Anna first and foremost. Her fashion is out of this world. Her heels are way too high. They make no sense to me at all. I give her a mad round of applause for that. But no, I mean, it's funny. The first time I ever saw Anna in person was at a media event, and it was hilarious to me because I don't know if she'd want me telling this story, but I'm going to. Sorry, not sorry, because it's funny. But I was standing around. There was like kind of this red tape, and there's all the camera crews and stuff. And so I was in that red blocked off area at this event, and Anna was there with Pierre. She's there with the kids as well. And I remember I saw Pierre at the front and I didn't see Anna. And I was like, what the heck? Where did that girl go? And so I just had curiosity turn behind me, and she was sitting in like the darkest corner of this room eating she had a full pizza. And I'm not kidding you. She had a slice in both hands.
Well,
And I was like, that is iconic. And I like you.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I made a comment to her about it. And she's like, listen, we're on the road. You got to eat where you can. And I'm like, I hear you, girl. Don't you? I love that. I love that for you. Get it.
No,
Um,
it probably got like 12 hours, I bet, without eating too. So
yeah. So, but that was just so funny to me. But no, and I hate to say this because I worry that people will be like, "Oh, you're just a fangirl," and it's like, no, I'm a pretty critical person. And if something rubbed me the wrong way, I don't think I'd like them as much as I do. But yes, I would say absolutely, very much, incredibly genuine human beings. The conversations that we had, that were off the record as well, were lovely and just very personable, like very, asking questions about you and telling stories, and like it was very much like you were meeting up with some friends you haven't seen in a while. And I always like when people are just casually nice, I guess, and casually funny and care about you and what you're saying and want to talk with you and like look at you and don't look through you. And so I yeah, I think overall the experience was phenomenal. It was so insane. I still can't even believe that that happened. But I had been trying to get an interview with him for quite some time. My channel wasn't as big, obviously, when I first started to reach out to him. And then I got a text message from there's a woman who works on his team, who still works on his team, if I'm not mistaken, who we had kind of exchanged numbers at one point or another, like a couple weeks prior to that. And then I got a text from her at like 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. And she said, "We're on." And I was like, "What? No way." Cause I just immediately put the pieces together. And then she called me right after and she just said, "Hey, can you be in Toronto on Monday?" And I was like, "It's 10 on Saturday. Yup, I'm booking a flight right now." And so I like hop on my computer, booked a flight as quick as possible. And they were incredibly accommodating with everything too. You know, like I'm a one-man show. I don't have a camera crew to do everything, but I know that they do. And so I said, I'm like, "You got these people on the clock anyway. Like I can go out and rent some stuff and I can set it up. Like I'm happy to do that. But you guys are already paying these guys to be with you. So like, I don't know if they're going to be there anyway. Maybe we could just use their equipment." And so they were very, very accommodating with that, which was incredible. So, yeah, overall, it was a really nice experience for sure. There were a few things like I would have loved to have had more time. Don't worry, stay tuned. There's more to come. But
But
I, I certainly would have loved if I could have had an hour. There's so many other things I would have gotten into, and I had some criticism with some of the questions that I had because they weren't hard hitting questions. And for me, one of my biggest reasons why I wanted to do the interview was to clear up some misconceptions and also talk about a few things that are very personal to me. And my Lord, if I'm flying to Toronto to interview you, I at least get one question that's personal to me. So so I was very happy to have done that. And yeah, just overall, it was phenomenal.
it seems like they were very genuine. I remember him saying something to you, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was, close to where you live in your province, there's something. And I was like, wow, like he remembered while giving his answers where you told him you were from. Right.
Yeah.
And I thought, and then you'd see stuff on social media of him just stopping to talk to workers and different things, and you could see those weren't staged. Some of them were people capturing it without him knowing, and
Mhm.
it just seemed like both of them were so incredibly genuine throughout this the campaign.
Well, and don't get me wrong, politics are politics. So there's certain things where you got to kind of play that up. But also, he plays it up pretty naturally, I would say. It doesn't seem like it's something that annoys him literally ever. Like even from years ago, that sort of stuff has never annoyed him. He's always happy to talk with people. And you don't see that from other people. You didn't see that from Jagmeet Singh, who was usually irritated by people, only had scheduled press conferences. You certainly don't see that from Mark Carney. So you didn't ever really see that from Justin Trudeau. Working in media, there was a couple of times where I kind of passed halls with Justin Trudeau, and it was always like a really intense situation every time, like really, really intense. Where like his security team, like, and I'm like, you're at my place of work doing an interview with another show, but like his security team would literally, and this sounds bad, but I mean, like artists do this too, but where like his security team would literally close the door to the room that you were in, and you weren't even allowed to leave to go to the bathroom until he was done his interview. Like it was very, and it's like, you guys already swept the building for bombs. Like, what do you think is going to happen here if I just need to tinkle? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and then Pierre Poilievre too. I've been to a couple different rallies of his, couple media events as well over the years that he's been at. And just the level of that was never quite the same. Even as his popularity grew to the level that it did, it just wasn't as intense. It just seemed a lot more like a safe place to be because it's a safe place, not because you have all of 16 cars following behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw that at rallies, medical situations, things like that. He would, call it out, get some
Mhm.
help for the people, things that of that nature. And then even brought that nurse up on stage to thank her. All sorts of little genuine things that are out there. But then also the other thing I noticed, and I don't think a lot of people talked about was, we had Mark Carney, we had all of the, stuff about the tax havens and things like that, all the different stories that have come out. we had that definitely with Justin Trudeau, but you never saw that with Pierre. Like, and nobody really talked about that. That Pierre never really had a scandal come out during the campaign or anything against him other than things people were making up about him. And, I thought that was interesting that as Canadians, we kind of ignored that in the election.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. That is an incredible point. And I think it's very telling. Like, oh, who do I want, a career politician or a central banker? I thought you guys hated technocratic people. What? Like, make up your freaking mind here. So we're supporting central bankers now, huh? I thought you hated that. Gosh, but like, to me, I would far rather a quote unquote career politician who has been elected his entire life up until this past situation, but we'll be fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, but who has been elected for like 20 years in his riding, elected by the public because they liked him and he was doing a good job. That sounds freaking awesome.
Yeah.
How many people do you know who lasted at their job in the same place for 20 plus years?
Not very many.
Exactly. And want to know why they do? Because they're good at what they do. Like, it's so crazy to me, that rhetoric. And then people saying like, oh, well, who cares? It's okay that Mark Carney, owns oil pipelines and other places that he's profiting off of and then stifling competition by ensuring that Canada doesn't produce any. That's totally fine. I'd rather have him than a career politician.
Yeah.
What? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you are so far gone. I say that with all due respect because, my Lord, we need to pray for these people for sure.
Oh,
but
yeah.
like,
Because you would have got fingers up at that. Like, that's,
yeah,
like, if just saying that, even though it's true, they would have given you the middle finger, called you Maple MAGA, all that other stuff, and not really given you. What I found most frustrating about the Liberals in the election was, Liberal supporters, I should say, is they could never give you a counter argument ever. It was
no,
all
it was
you were
you
making
would
or whatever.
yeah
Right?
you would switch over to a regurgitated talking point, for
Exactly.
sure. It's
Yeah.
actually one of those things that it always kills me. And I'm sure that I use no, actually, I don't think I do now that I think about it. I was gonna say I'm sure I use talking points, but I'm like, I actually don't know that I have ever really.
Yeah.
If I have, let me know. But I'm like, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I'd be open about it if there was one that I did. There's so many people where I've had what I thought were good faith debates about things, and I learned things too. Like, I'm always happy to hear from the other side. I might roll my eyes at you. I might call my sister and complain about you, but like, I'm happy to have the conversation nonetheless, and maybe it'll end up well. But like, there's so many of those that I had with people that it seemed like it was good faith, and I'm like, you're presenting facts that are very misleading, or it's not really the full picture. But like, I understand, at the very least, I understand how you got from point A to point B. May I suggest I don't know, read, and you might just not ever have to get to that point to begin with. But like, at the end of the day, whatever, your view is your view, that's great. And then all of a sudden they throw something in there. Oh, well, at least he's not a paper boy. What the
Oh,
hell?
yeah.
We're
That
mocking kids for their childhood jobs right now. What? I'd rather a paper boy than a silver spoon.
exactly. Exactly. They
Gosh.
didn't even live here before the election. Like, come on. It was unbelievable what they were believing, number one,
Mhm.
and what they just didn't know was
Yeah.
like, it was incredible. So with the final two questions, one is going to be hard to answer, and I apologize because I didn't prepare you for it. But
Oh, that's fine.
in Jasmine Laine's opinion, if we were suddenly to see the government fall tomorrow, what do you think the Conservatives would need to do differently this time to actually get a win?
I think that the Conservatives, I said this actually recently too, so sorry if there's people who have watched me before, but they need to stop playing defense. I think most importantly, they need to stop playing defense. They need to play offense. They need to stop being afraid of the narratives that are going to be created. You want to know why Donald Trump was so successful? He didn't care. He did not care what the mainstream media said about him. He made fun of them. He did, and I don't necessarily approve of that all the time too. I'm like wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. That's kind of my life motto. But he just didn't care. He didn't care what happened. He said what he thought, what he knew to be true, and he did not bend the knee to literally anybody. And I think that because being a conservative is legal, It's also totally normal. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's democratic, in fact. And so to me, there is nothing wrong with just being your perfectly legal democratic political party and advocating for the things that fall in line with that. And I I just think overall you need to stop playing defense. You need to stop waiting for things to happen and then defending yourself against them. You need to play a solid offense game, and you need to call people out when need be. And so many people are like, "Oh, well, the conservatives are so negative." And it's like, "Yeah, well, we're kind of in a hot mess right now, aren't we? This is a bit of a pickle, right? Yeah? How do you want it? What do you want to do? You want to sing like Red Rover to get over it? That's not going to fly here. Like we need to actually have some hard conversations. And there's a way to do that as well, where you're not bending the knee, you're standing your ground, and you're not letting other people control the narrative. And so even with that, I would say without a doubt, there needs to be a much larger presence of conservatives on mainstream outlets. I certainly understand why they opted away from that route. But I think this time around, we definitely need to change that. And we just need to stop allowing people to shame us for the very rational, well thought out views and ideas that we have. We need to stop letting people shame us with these outrageous slurs that make no sense, that are irrelevant, irrational, and a lie, just so that they can hold on to power while we then have to waste our time defending ourselves against them. I'm pretty over that. I think the time is now that we need to play a really solid offense, and you need to stop letting other people take the reins, and you just need to say what you think and be honest about it and do your research so that you don't sound like an idiot when you say what you think. But like, you just need to be honest. And there's so many wonderful things to look forward to, when you're able to have those hard conversations, because change actually happens when you have those, rather than offering everybody a veto so that you don't get a pipeline built, which is ridiculous. And then you don't have accountability. Like, that's ridiculous. I also think, there's a lot of different strategies that the conservatives could employ to ensure that, like, there's more of a focus on some of the key issues, especially in House of Commons, things like that, like stuff that's happening during question period. There's some stances, maybe some out of the box thinking, in terms of some other issues, some other takeaways, stuff like that. I think it would be wise to avoid perhaps some of the talking points. I know some people got annoyed by that. I did. And so, but there's other ways to say things to really drive the point home. And so just overall, I think we just need to do more of exactly who we are and what we believe unapologetically, because there's literally nothing to apologize for standing your ground and saying that I want to be able to buy a house one day.
Exactly.
Since when did that become something that people could shame you over? That's stupid. So stop playing those stupid games and be kind always. Be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. Like, there's a way to do it, and do your research about absolutely everything. That's my general message to not only the Conservative Party, but also just the general public.
I love it. That's a great point to stop at. Almost. I just wanted to say one more thing, and it comes from actually viewers that have left a number of comments on other videos that I have, and I want to get your thoughts in to close this out. I always like to give the floor to the person that's being interviewed anyway to close it out. And the question is around it's sort of around the negativity, but it's what can we do here? We've lost all hope, especially younger generations seem to be in this. Well, we lost, and now I'm never going to vote again because it just doesn't matter anymore. And that's really the entire wrong way to look at it, and we know that. But then they say, well, people just tell me, oh, write to your MP. Well, but that's not going to do anything anymore, and all of that. So from your perspective, what do you say to that person, that younger generation that feels a little defeated this time around? Maybe it's the first time they voted and they didn't go their way. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if I'm speaking directly to young people, and I'll elaborate beyond that, but in terms of young people, if you're in school, if you're in college, start something, start a group, because I can guarantee you are absolutely not alone. There are so many people who will just never admit it, but they definitely voted conservative. And if you can do something to unite people in that way, and to also, kind of put out the fire around the shame, the gaslighting, and just the lies and smears that come at you for literally appreciating a Democratic Party over a different one. That's called democracy. So let's stop shaming each other for that. It's ridiculous to me. And I just will not stand for that anymore. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you guys wanted to protect our sovereignty and our democracy. It does not compute what you're doing right now. But so, for young people, especially, I would say use your voice, talk about it, and very much, I cannot stress this one enough, research and read and pay attention to the things that are happening around you, and the way that things are impacting people, and just have that so you're at a point where you can pull it out of your back pocket. It does not take very long to find something in particular, an issue that in particular that you're really passionate about, and to just learn everything you can about it, so that there is nothing anybody can say to you that you cannot say that's stupid and you're wrong in a nice way. um and then come at them, with something that they simply cannot deny and cannot ignore. They still will, but they'll look dumb if they do that. So that's always a good place to be. um and so and I would say too, yeah, starting different, they call them like chapters and stuff in the US. I don't know if that's what they're called in Canada. I've never been to university or college. So but if you start a club, start something, and start talking about things, and don't let the devil on your shoulder tell you things and make you, cave to weakness, to ego, to pride. Just always go at things with a really good heart and open mind, and a well-researched brain that knows what you're talking about. So that would probably be my best advice. And just in general to everybody as well, I'll say it again, be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. You can absolutely change minds, give new perspective, as long as you do it in the right way. And, none of us are experts on anything. We're all wrong sometimes. That's okay. That's the brilliantness of being a human being. And it's wonderful. And we can always learn and grow. And I think that you're never, ever going to change somebody's mind if you are calling them names in a comment section. So let's be better than that. And let's definitely act and lead by example, by not succumbing to some of those whims. It's ridiculous, the things that I see, and I see it on my channel. I remove people from my channel sometimes if I see them being a little too feisty, because I just don't like that energy. Get away from me. You're a bad energy monster, and I don't want you in my life anymore. Um,
Yeah.
so be careful with that, certainly. But just, yeah, in general, the power of the people is so very important. Take a look at the carbon tax as an example. The liberals didn't remove that because the conservatives wanted them to. They removed it because the conservatives successfully had enough evidence, researched it enough, and were able to share that message with the masses, to the point where everybody else was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So strive to do things like that as well, because it does change things. There are policy changes that do happen when people are educated and aware, and that is the one thing that they don't want you to be, which is why they pay the CBC upwards of $1.3 billion a freaking year. So, just educate yourself as much as you can, and be kind always. I always kind of leave on that, because there's no hope in having conversations with anybody if you're just going to be at each other's throats all the time. So just try not to be that person, and to do all your research you can, and spread the word, and say what you think, and live in a good way, where you are embodying all of that, because being conservative isn't a bad thing. It's about conserving the wonderful things about our country and who we are as human beings in our society. And I think that we need more of that. And I know that things can get very angry and tense sometimes, but, try your best to avoid that. I think I repeated the same thing 7 times. So hopefully the message got across.
I think it did. I think those are wise and beautiful words. I love the wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. I think that's really, really cool to to frame it that way. And I think
It is biblical. So
yeah, and it's really neat that that you have that perspective, right? Because it is, you do see, and I know you're much younger than me, but it is your generation that sees yeah, a little bit of extra frustration out there right now, and that's such a great way to look at it, and to know that somebody within their generation is looking at it that way. I really appreciate that you shared that. And um,
Yeah, joke's on you. I'm actually 52.
oh, nice, nice. Well, then you're older. You're older, but yeah, no, I appreciate you so much for being on here. I think that it's a really positive message to end on. And for anybody who's watching, obviously put your thoughts in the comments. I can share some of them with you, Jasmine, later. And you know, but don't put mean comments, because we're tired of that. That's done. But there will always be mean comments. But I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry for talking for so long. Remember when you told me that there was a 20-minute time or 20-minute time limit?
Yeah,
Whatever you say there.
that's
Huh,
right.
look
Yeah,
at me go.
no time limit. I just didn't want to take up too much more of your time, 20 minutes. But this has been an awesome conversation, been tons of information, and also thoughts that I think people are going to get a lot out of, because it gives you a chance to say, okay, it's not just about writing to your MP. It is about, you know, making the effort though. And I
Yeah.
love the idea of joining clubs and chapters and things like that too, to help do that. And you're right, there's a lot of closet conservatives out there too, and you'll find them pretty easily when
I
you.
know so many. There's actually a girl I'm very good friends with now. I met her about a year and a half ago. And I remember she asked me what I did for a living. And I was starting to kind of talk about politics on YouTube ish at that point in time. And I was like, I don't really know what you call it, but like, talk about politics on the internet. And she was like, what kind of politics? And I was like, conservative. And then she was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I can't have conversations like that with any of my friends. So what do you think about Bill C-63?" And I'm like, "I like this woman." Okay. So
Ah,
there's a lot of us. There are a lot of us out there. And yeah, I just think you just have to speak it out loud, right? And you have to live and lead by example. I think that's so very important. And things will follow, rewards will follow. And Rome wasn't built in a day. These things take time, unfortunately, and we're in a battle of good and evil. It really does seem that way with so many of the bills and legislation that's been proposed, conversations that have been had, priorities that have been made that it just make no sense at all. It really does feel like a battle of good and evil some days. And I just want you to remember, though, that in the battle of good and evil, good always wins. It just takes a little bit longer because it does not do the shady, sneaky stuff that evil will, in order to appear as though it's winning for a little while and to do as much damage and destruction as it can before eventually good takes over. And so I do think that we're in that cycle, not just in Canada. We're seeing that pattern play out in other nations as well. And we're going to get there. Everything's one day we'll look back and laugh at, oh, Mark Carney, that loser. It's so,
for
you
that.
know,
Yeah, exactly. For his 6 months of prime minister time.
yeah, right.
Let's hope. But yeah, I know that's a great way to end it. Very positive, and I love that. Thank you so much again for joining us. For anybody who wants to follow Jasmine, obviously you can watch Jasmine on YouTube at Jasmin Laine. You can also catch her on TikTok and on Instagram at that same handle, on X at Jasmin Laine _, and also I believe on all the podcast platforms if people want to put you in their ear
Mhm.
for a walk in the park or something, right?
That sounds lovely. Yes, I like that.
Exactly. See, parks. Well, we still have them. There you go. But yeah, but that's the way to get in touch with Jasmine. And Jasmine, again, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much. We'll chat again soon.
Well, my sincerest thanks to Jasmine Laine for joining us today on Bakes on Things. I'm very, very grateful that she took the time to sit down with all of us and have this interview. Obviously, one of the most genuine people you'll meet, and one of the better political commentators in this country. There's no question about that. Make sure you follow her here on YouTube at Jasmine Laine, the exact same handle on TikTok and Instagram, as well as Rumble. And then, of course, you can still follow her on X as well at Jasmine Laine _. A great follow on all of those platforms. Please go ahead and do that. We'll put all of that information obviously in the description of this video as well, and tag Jasmine. But my thanks again to Jasmine. As we're not getting the truth from our own government, it's lovely to have people that are actually exposing that truth on all of these platforms, including Jasmine, who's one of the best. So for Jasmine, I'm Chris Baker. Thanks so much for joining us on Bakes on Things. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. It all helps the algorithm grow the channel. And we will catch you again tomorrow.